It's been 1 year, and the story of this house has changed dramatically. There's been a renovation, history uncovered, and new stories to tell in this once forgotten house. From where we started to where we ended up, well, let's just say we've built ourselves a time machine.
The American West. Here amid the vast grassland and engulfing sky, people from around the world settled in search of the freedom represented by land ownership. Traveling across continents and oceans, they arrived with shovels and plows and stood on their piece of America, believing that they were part of something bigger. They were. Through hardships and triumphs, they developed the core of the continent, a region once thought of as uninhabitable, and in doing so, helped shape a nation's sense of determination and independence. Yet the effort came at a high cost.
This house saw major changes this year. Some parts aren't exactly as they were. Some parts have been recreated from the forest and the stones of the ground. It's the same, and yet, of course, it's not the same. This is the memory of a house, but it's also the story of a generation of humble houses and families across the prairie and this nation. Maybe a story a lot like your own family. This house was built by pioneers in search of a better life out west. Uncle Dan's is not the finest, nor the best built, certainly not respected over the years, but damn if it isn't tough. It has made it through 135 years of Montana winters, hailstorms, windstorms. It's been jerry-rigged by farmers to be a grain bin, lived in by cattle, marmots, and probably every other creature that's around the area. Uncle Dan's has had a hard and long life, and this is the end. Or is it? Our group of friends is coming together to save it, to take Uncle Dan's cabin and rebuild it, as a marker of the past, to give to the next generation.
I would like to live in Uncle Dan's, actually.
Would you?
I'd like to stand in the window.
Robbie and I have been friends since childhood. Robbie grew up on this ranch, married Jessie, and now they have 2 kids. It's pretty much down to us and our generation. If we don't touch these last buildings, well, they'll disappear. Uncle Dan's will be a moldy pile of boards on the ground in 10 years. That was the story 1 year ago, before we had touched much of anything, or even had a plan set. But eventually, we did start delicately at first, and then not so delicately, digging into this old house. Today, it looks like this, full of life and family, memories new and old. It's part fresh wood, part perfectly preserved, a monument to the pioneers who built it. This is no top-notch, expert renovation. No government money, no historical society helped. It was just us, normal ranchers and friends. It was clear that no one else was coming to save this place, and maybe it didn't deserve saving. It's the house of a humble man, nobody famous. But with the love of our own Montana history and the history of neighbors alike, we gave ourselves a year to lift and preserve this old house.
I'm Robbie.
I'm Jessie.
And I'm Clayton, and this is the 1889 Project. Before we start from the beginning, let's jump all the way to the end to show you one fascinating artifact that went from rotting in the earth beneath this house to being a functional and beautiful tool again.
This axe has a super cool story. This isn't just any old axe. Early on in the process of disassembling Uncle Dan's, we had all the walls cut away and we had started in on the stone foundation. Our good friend Brad came out with his metal detector, and he was digging all around this area, and the metal detector kept reading silver. So he kept digging, and he gets down to a 7-Up can, I think it was. And he's like, well, that's ridiculous. And he swipes the ground, and underneath the ground, right beneath that 7-Up can, was an old axe head. All the wood had rotted away, but a double-bitted axe head was sitting there looking like a giant ball of rust. Well, we took it, we set it aside on the stone foundation we were working on, and we didn't think a whole lot more of that. It just went into the pile with nails and bits of metal and the little whistle we found while metal detecting. And we kind of thought that was that. And then it was Robbie's birthday party, and the whole family came out, and Uncle Pete looked down and spotted that axe head. And he said, you know what? I can fix it. And he took it back to his shop, and he started to work some magic on it.
Hi, my name's Pete Smith. I'm Uncle Pete to Robbie and Jesse. I've been asked to get involved with this axe restoration. Now, I've been restoring things for fun for 50 years, something like that. Old fuel pump, old airplanes, old motorcycles, and things like that. So they asked me to take a look at this axe that they dug up at Uncle Dan's cabin site. And I like making old things better. So when the axe came out of the ground, it was covered with heavy rust scale, oxidation. First process I did was I used a chip and hammer and a little bit of sandblasting, and I got most of the rust scale off. And I wasn't happy with the finish, so I started buffing it with probably a 36 grit, 40 grit flap wheel. Buffed it with a Scotch-Brite pad, and that's the way it looked when it came out of the ground. Didn't remove much metal, but I wasn't happy with that, so I continued grinding, spent about another hour with a 36 40 grit flap wheel, and it smoothed it out quite a bit. And then I kept after it, and I removed some more metal and did some more polishing. About maybe 2 hours into the project, it was starting to look like something. So then I really kept after it, and I got it looking almost like new. However, there's deep pits that I couldn't remove without taking a lot of metal, and I gave up. And then I got to thinking it really makes sense to allow the axe to retain some of its original heritage, and I'm going to leave it like that. There's 4 sides or ends to this axe, and its various stages. Came out of the ground, polished up, cleaned up a little bit more, and a lot. And when I'm all done, I'll have probably about 4 hours into this, and it'll look like help preserve the wood. A wonderful piece of machinery, a nice hand tool that will be very usable. There we got the original look, how it came out of the ground, less the scale, kind of a semi-finished, polished look. Got a hickory handle. This baby's guaranteed to cut a cord of wood a day with the right person swinging it. Right, Jesse? So now that it's done, I can go back to finish the restoration of a 1946 tail wheel from a Rocket Champ. Teaching my grandson how an internal combustion engine works. And I've got an Indian 1928 that's in pieces, because I'm working on it, and many other things. So that's it from Pete's Workshop Central.
And after all that work, he has brought us not just an axe that's functional and useful again, but he's brought us the axe. The axe that was found right here under a foot of earth, no doubt used by someone right around Uncle Dan's way, way, way back in time. And Uncle Pete commemorated it with a hickory handle that says Uncle Dan's Axe, 2024. On the one side, you can still see some of the character and the age, and on the other, it's polished to perfection. We can't thank you enough, Uncle Pete. That is a heck of a cool piece of history that's not just going to hang on some wall, but it's going to get used.
Our plan here is to recreate Uncle Dan's as it was, or as it could have been, using our somewhat limited, but among family and friends, pretty diverse skill sets. We'll salvage whatever we can from the original structure and set it aside. At the end of the day, we want this to be a pretty special place. And we want to be realistic too. Some folks might be watching and saying, "You can save that. Why don't you put on a new roof, add some supports, and paint it?" Well, let's take a look at why that's not so easy.
Well, it's nailed in the middle here and here, but they're not. They're just nailing 2 and 2. And you can even see there's a board behind it. So this is like horizontal, backwards board and batten.
So this
It's
bit in
inside
here, is this tar paper?
It's something to seal it off, but there's a board. There's 2 layers of boards, but instead of having it look with that strip outside, it's on the inside. Then these were probably pretty damn close, I would guess, and they've dried apart or stuff shifted. But the fact that you see these big boards and just their nailing pattern, these 2, they all have up high, these 2, 1, 2, but way up there, there's nothing in the middle. They just put 2 in the top and the bottom of the board.
Inside, the floor and ceiling have pretty much been turned to mulch.
You can see the ceiling, what the boards that they left from the ceiling. See, Jess?
Yeah.
They left, I mean, it's not lath and plaster, they just had the same flooring. It's the same tongue and groove flooring
No, it is.
that they had
Groove. Yeah. You're
on
right.
the outside.
You're right. It goes all the way across. See where they cut it?
Yep.
The sawzall?
They did not have sawzalls then.
What'd they use?
A handsaw.
The back addition has had a door open and cows have made a home in there. There isn't much of this house that has escaped catastrophic structural damage. The weathered walls and boards are definitely going to be saved. Like an art installation, we will find a use in the finished house. Most of the boards on the outside have been sandblasted by the wind and used as scratching posts by itchy cows. The square-headed nails are treasures that must have been handmade by a blacksmith. The architecture itself, though, it needs new wood to be milled and fresh hands to tie it all together.
Well, we are gearing up to start rebuilding Uncle Dan's. So first things first, we have to get some trees knocked down and the sawmill out so we can start milling boards to repair it. And I'm here at the log barn. I'm gonna grab a chainsaw for Robbie and see if I can make myself useful. Here we go.
The old house is more rotten wood than solid wood at this point in its life. We know we still have to rebuild entire sections of it, but we don't want to buy fancy lumber. There's a forest of trees surrounding this place. What if we were to take the time and effort to use those? Before starting any major building project, we need to harvest the materials. Here in Montana, it's usually pine and fir. Fir trees, scarce and precious, grow on the dark, shady sides of mountains, usually deeper in the forest. They have tight growth rings and offer strong structural integrity for building. Jesse has years of experience making furniture with old-growth fir. This rare wood has tight growth rings and a deep color that new wood just can't match. Although fir is best for many things, the pine around here is actually very useful and very plentiful, and it's free. However, pine brings a new set of challenges.
So part of with these trees here, like picking out which trees to cut down, is you've got 3, 4 good-sized trees, some of these little things with tops out, and we don't need that many big trees. And this is about the size of tree that we're looking to handle on the sawmill for boards. And it's got a bunch of little knots. It's got a bunch of knots, but they're small. You get some of these other trees and the knots start to get, like this tree, for example, there. The knots down low, it's got big branches, and those make terrible boards for what we need.
Yeah.
You can see there isn't any, they call it a Dutchman, but you haven't overcut anywhere. It matches up perfect. So that's what we look for as far as your notch, is you don't want any cut too far, and you want just a clean triangle all the way through. Part of the trouble with pine is there isn't much, tension in it. And so you don't get these long fibers usually. But in that case, there was enough weight going before it tore that out. It just pulled it all out the side. In theory, if it pulled it out the middle, then that ruins the boards up the middle. Off the side, at least you can cut that off.
It's pretty soft, prone to rot and insect damage, sappy, and full of knots. It's not the strongest wood, but we use what we've got. Montana doesn't have oak or chestnut or maple just kicking around. Pine is what we have, so pine is what we use.
Whoa, wait.
These are.
This is the first sunlight this cabin has seen since the 1930s. It's been boarded up for almost 100 years.
These old iron tie rods held the building together when it was used as a grain bin in the mid-1900s. Once upon a time in its life, this house was filled to the rafters with barley and wheat seeds, and that part of its story will come back to haunt us as we get further down the road. Let's just say that a whole habitat was created in here, thanks to the mountains of food held in the house. And when it was finally abandoned, well, all that composting moisture didn't do the place any favors.
In some ways, this house is so simple, but it's still keeping its secrets. Some little kid signed an M, a couple M's, and looks like a staircase. We have a little kid who does that. It's pretty cool. This was all behind plywood for the grain bin, so it must be pretty decently old.
I think there's rat poison in this. All those pellets.
Really?
Nah, they just poop. Stupid, like a two
It is
button.
a Carhartt like every other Carhartt, except it has 2 buttons on it.
Yeah, and I won't wear it.
Because you have too much chest hair coming out.
No,
Like
it's
a
the fear
Italian man.
that the chest hair might get caught in a button.
We do not know exactly when this house was built, or even if a family lived in it. We do know the land deed shows it was homesteaded in 1889, just before Montana became a state. We had a Bureau of Land Management archaeologist come out last week to take a look at this cabin and help us solve the mystery of what it was originally used for. Could it possibly have been an 1800s schoolhouse?
That's why the layout is kind of weird. That's why I'm trying to figure out the windows, the doors, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
What was a window? What was a door?
there are a lot of windows and they're big.
Would a schoolhouse have a central
Not necessarily.
fireplace or chimney?
It would have some kind of wood stove, but it wouldn't necessarily be in the center. It could be.
There's even been real questions about whether it was moved here, a common occurrence for lots of buildings in this area.
And they had the inspection reports that I was trying to find for you guys, and they had the improvements, and they had the investigations, the inspections, and they found that some homesteads were moved back and forth from one claim to the next claim,
Right.
and so there was fraud involved.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So it was during the year. They would get inspected, then they'd
Yep.
move that over to Terry's, and
Because
they would
there-
get...
Yeah.
In this particular case, there was a mom who homesteaded, a daughter who homesteaded, a son who homesteaded,
Yeah.
and they would move the buildings.
Yeah.
Just put it on skids and slide it.
Yeah.
Zane talked about how maybe it was a schoolhouse. Could it have been?
So the thing with the Jackson Ranch is everything's kind of literal. Of
So
some
yeah, if
sort.
it was a schoolhouse, they would have called it the old schoolhouse.
It would have been the schoolhouse. I could envision this being more of a summer house for him while he was trying to get the place situated.
Yeah, because by the time we know he homesteaded it, which was 1889, what, summer?
Yep.
Summer of 1889, we know he was married and had at least 2, maybe 3 kids.
Yeah.
So I can't picture, and you eventually had 6 kids.
Yeah.
So I can't picture this being their family home.
Thing is settled, so that, I mean, everything has settled, so we're missing some foundation.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is that would make this seem like this is the right location. At least this addition was built after it was in this location. Is why else would you have that cornerstone right there?
Yeah.
So you have a cornerstone and you're missing a log. So, I mean, there are a couple of things that would argue that at least this part was built on this site.
In regards to it being moved here, this little piece of ground that it's on, it's maybe 3-4 acres, is some very, very good ground. And
for
as far as farming,
Yeah.
and why somebody would put it there at a later date just to put grain in it.
I never really thought about that. So yeah,
That's
it's not where you'd want a grain bin if
No.
you were picking places to put a
No.
grain bin.
Have you looked at the top of the rafters?
No.
Over this precariously.
Oh, to see if there was like a floor on it? Interesting.
That's where I'm just trying to think, is there a pan? There's nothing up here. So there was no floor that was nailed down.
So if it wasn't moved here, that means that probably in the 1880s, 1890s, we can be pretty sure it was built on site here.
I mean, there's some certainties that we can say about it. The certain thing is there was a ceiling in this.
Yeah, there
So-
was a ceiling,
And
but like Zane climbed up into the rafters and there's no attic floor. So that means they didn't store food up there, kids didn't sleep up there.
And the fact that it's all milled lumber would also kind of fit the fact that we have newspaper clippings from the 1880s of them
Yeah.
owning a sawmill together.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like the ice cream analogy, don't get high on your own supply. But you
right,
could, I'm sure, sneak some boards out
right.
and build a place. So Dan McLaughlin worked with my great-great-grandfather sawmilling. They met in Bozeman in the 1880s and came up here together. It was a tight-knit family. It wasn't just a neighbor that they didn't know that they bought out. Eventually, history was forgotten. It's interesting when you start to think about it. And unfortunately, all our go-to resources, grandparents, are gone. So that adds to the mystery of it.
Understanding the history of what this place was is critical to deciding how we want to rebuild it. Our mission here is to recreate this house honestly and architecturally speaking, precisely. Even if we can't save every original board they used, we can replicate the idea. If they used pine siding, we will use pine siding. If they put a window or a door on a wall, we will put a window or a door there.
We have a problem to solve at the original homestead house. Nearly all of the siding is rotten.
And the roof sheeting is rotten.
And the trusses are rotten. Now that's not too surprising since this was all put up in the 1800s.
But instead of buying a solution, we're gonna make one.
Cut some there, and
Because of
there's rot, and
geez, how deep do you think that goes?
we'll see. So I'm gonna make a cut like that. We'll get 1x10s out of here.
Okay, you guys have to see this piece of pine. This is probably one of the clearest cuts of lumber we've had this whole time. There are no knots in this whole piece. It's gorgeous.
All this milling is for rebuilding Uncle Dan's cabin. Of course, this is just one side project on a ranch that has lots of work that needs doing. Preserving old buildings on it is a luxury in a sense. It can only happen after the other work is done. Winter is the time to get the tractors ready for planting in spring. Animals need extra feeding. Odd jobs need doing. This isn't a giant ranch, but it is a productive one that has to earn a living for the family. As the temperatures drop and Montana sank into a deep winter, Robbie started going out every day to the forest. Days not spent in the forest were spent behind the mill. The sawmilling for this project felt endless. Day after day, Robbie went out in the snow and hauled in more trees. Then he milled the boards. Then he got more trees. Frozen sap, sawdust flying, numb fingers. That was our winter. But that sounds like drudgery, right? Actually, it was super satisfying work.
All right, so I've got to take this pickup up to the upper barn so we can hook it up to the old lumber and stack and sticker some of the new lumber. So let's get this thing going.
In the midst of the milling, the pace had to be broken. On a warm Chinook day, we thought maybe the ground had thawed a bit. Maybe we could try something we had been looking forward to.
It's gonna be like Joe Dirt. You're gonna hit it with a pickaxe and just go flying everywhere.
Is it a pipe?
Something.
Yeah, it's metal something. A dinosaur bone.
It's a dinosaur turd. Woo! Look. It's a piece of pipe. Cast iron pipe. I'd like to think it was the metal detector that found it, but probably just dumb luck. See, it's right underneath my foot. See? It's going crazy. Every time. I can't do that.
That's something. That's barbed wire. We can date that. So there's giant square nails. I don't know what those were for. Then this medium size with a big head. And then I'm guessing these are some type of finish nail. So they have a tiny, almost non-existent head and a square body.
I think we have to do some investigation on.
I bet real detectorists are like, yeah, when the ground freezes, it just all sounds the same.
Yeah.
Idiots. All right, well, we found a few nails and things that help date this cabin. But honestly, the ground's frozen. We got to come back in the spring, try to film some stuff, maybe find one of our friends who knows what they're doing. So we only just started demo on Uncle Dan's last week. We want to be able to preserve any of the good parts that are there, but we also want this thing to last at least another 100 years. So by doing all this sawmilling today and holding off on some of the big demo, basically we're giving ourselves enough time to get some of the moisture out of the wood, let it dry, and to make a better plan.
All the lumber for the repairs and rebuilding is made. Stones are on site for the foundation. But we have half a rotten house here that needs to move, because the first major work of laying a fresh stone foundation has to begin. And we can't do that with a house falling in on top of us. So this part is about to get messy and a bit tragic, but here we go.
It's a tragic day at Uncle Dan's. All the rot has to go, and there's really only one way to do it. By force. And the first thing that has to go, this lean-to.
I really did not want these boards coming off.
See, when we start looking into its construction, it becomes obvious that this lean-to was added at a later date. Architecturally, it just doesn't make sense as part of the original homestead. Plus, I think you can tell, this lean-to is in rough shape. Every single rafter, board, piece of sheeting, it's all rotten. The roof went on this lean-to a long time ago, and subsequently, there's just nothing left to save.
Well, we know this was an addition. You can see where they built this lean-to on. The roof meets the other roof, and they actually roofed over the shingles. So those shingles, and I'm sure if you looked at them, are weathered. So whether it's 10, 15, or 20 years afterwards, this was definitely put on after that.
We actually built a model to show you our plan. We're gonna build back exactly the way that they built originally. So if they put a window here, we'll put a window here. If the door was this size, we'll keep it this size. And one of my favorite parts coming up is that we're actually building the furniture from scratch for this house. I'm actually in the process of making a ladder-back chair from scratch, from a tree, so that video should be out in the next couple weeks. We're lucky that through a friend of a friend, we even managed to find an early 1900s Cookstove, a real one, life-size, in a storage shed in town. So that's gonna be one of our next big efforts, is cleaning that up and getting it ready to go back in this house. Even the roof trusses, although they've all rotted out, we're gonna rebuild them in a very similar way to how they did. Maybe a little bit stronger.
I'm putting a picture there. And I'll put them there.
We want to go back to the earliest moments of this homestead's existence. Back to 1889, when Montana was still the frontier, and one of its earliest pioneers was out here in this field, building his own house. This house. Today is the point of no return. We've cut trees, milled boards, and dug through the history books. And now, we fight the rot.
That's trying to unnerve it.
The wall's moving.
Yeah, well, this isn't nailed in up there.
Eventually you're gonna pull another board off and you're just gonna go falling through. Really like
Look at
my
this.
idea.
Look at this. This is why we want to take apart Uncle Dan's, is just to be able to clean stuff. I don't think they used big enough nails to hold these 1x10s on. Here's a regular nail, size of that. And you look up at that thing and that's the size of a nickel right there. And there's 1, 2, 3, they kind of go everywhere here. I don't know why they thought they needed a nail that big.
That is a porcupine of nails.
Yeah.
Why? Why did they do it?
The more the merrier.
I mean, that's pretty cool.
I know, I think it's pretty cool too.
That's a huge piece of wood.
It's huge. Talk about weather. Just don't throw anything down on my head, okay? It's cloth. I'm guessing somebody stuck that in there to stop the wind from blowing through. Come on!
There you go.
Glad we got that off.
No fire this time.
This lean-to is a part of this building's story. Maybe it was once a kitchen addition. It had a use, but our goal here is to take this house back to its earliest days, to 1889, when this was a homestead shack on America's frontier, back when Montana wasn't even a state yet. So, brutal as this looks, just know we saved any beautiful boards to be reused in the future. But it's a good reminder too. Neglect can become so serious that there's nothing left to save. This lean-to was filled up with grain in years past when the house had lost its purpose and became a simple farm storage bin. And that grain was left to rot one year. That grain had basically turned the floor and walls into a compost pile. Once that happened, well, the die was cast, and this lean-to's fate was sealed. Our job now is to clear the way for what we can save. We found this old metal advertising sign when we ripped off the roof of the lean-to. We've been trying to figure out what it says.
Yeah.
B-E-E Miller?
Beer. And the Miller is cursive up top. Maybe the last one is an N?
Blue ribbon. Pabst Blue ribbon. Maybe?
Maybe. We have to save this scrap of history too. Whatever it reads, it's a piece of art now.
To everything there is a season, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot the plant, a time to tear down and a time to build.
We had to stop the work today because the ground's turned to mud. But hey, at least it's warmer. Next up, we tackled the original homestead house. The roof is caving in and we've got broken trusses all over. It's a safety hazard and will be a challenge in and of itself. Now the roof comes off. In order to get down to the foundation to start laying fresh stones, we have to remove all the rot from the original house. How are we going to do that? Well, more gently than we did with the lean-to, that's for sure. Kind of like the layers of an onion. And the roof needs to go first. These boards were all saved, and spoiler alert, these ended up being our very best salvaged boards. Of course, every tiny shingle nail had to be pulled and hammered out later in the shop, but these boards almost all returned to the house after we got the bones rebuilt. Their lives are going long into the future.
Now I reckon we probably have to go over to the other side and do the same thing. But we have to pull this off.
I got it. Yeah. It would actually make a really cool cabinet board or something.
Ready, bounce, George. Bounce. Poor bud.
There.
So this one?
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Push away.
Like
There.
this?
Yep, perfect. Now, we want to take the butt.
Is this gonna kick back and hit me? Knock me off?
No, just pinch you against the other one.
Yeah.
See? That ain't too bad, is it?
No, that's doable.
Yeah. Having fun yet?
God, I saw that going right for me.
Hold on tight.
This is like, oh yeah, this is a strong wall.
Don't.
Don't pull me. This?
This is my lappies.
This is like
Now that we have one truss down, we can get accurate measurements. We aren't just stripping things off the house today, we're actively rebuilding. The new trusses will keep the same proportions, just beefed up slightly. The last 130 years have revealed a ton of weak points, and where we might need to add extra support.
So we beefed these up a bit
These were 2x6s, but we're gonna use 2x8s. Partly because that's what we have, and partly because it's stronger. Ready?
That's one truss made, just need 10 more. Squeezing in a day to dismantle and build new trusses hasn't been easy. Farming is kicking off as the weather warms. Feels like everything all at once, and Robbie has been burning the candle at both ends, getting seeds into the ground before the rain comes. It's a good day though, because the crops are officially planted and the 1889 project is making real progress. Despite the carnage, this 1889 homestead house is not being torn down. As wild as today is about to get, and we are about to take a very unconventional approach to renovation, know that the end goal is to save this place. Now it's time for tackling the walls, but we walked right into a disaster.
Today was a train wreck. In fact, this house might have just had the last nail in the coffin for it.
So yesterday was a bummer. What are we doing now?
We've been trying so hard to save this place, or at least some part of it. And now,
Well, with the warm temperatures, we had 72 degrees yesterday, and you could really smell the mice. We didn't realize how, it makes sense it being a granary, but the walls are just feet thick of mouse nests. And
you can taste it. You can taste it.
If we ever had any intention of staying here or cooking here, you couldn't.
No.
Not with the smell and the taste that gets on your tongue.
So, all those plans to try to save original boards and stuff, I don't know how we're gonna do it. We gotta come up with a new plan.
This house fell into such decay over the past 130 years. The way back to life is going to be more drastic than we had planned. This will be a big pivot. We had hoped to save the whole interior of this 1889 house. Spring is throwing everything she's got at us. 16 inches of snow overnight in May. We can't know how much we can save until we cut open every wall of the house. Then we'll have more answers, and we'll be able to make a plan as soon as the sun comes back out. But today, we'd better get back to the ranch shop and build the one thing we know we need: windows. In all the exploration we've done so far, we've only found one small chard of window glass. And that made us wonder, did this 1889 house even have glass windows? Maybe they were just greased paper windows. That was actually pretty common on the prairie. And we've decided to go with glass, not paper. But we aren't just buying something modern and off the shelf.
So we ordered custom wooden windows for a previous project, and actually the leftover windows are a pretty close fit. But in order to make the extras work for this project, we have to cook up a semi-homemade solution. It's gonna be 1 part leftover windows, 1 part farmer and woodworker ingenuity. And a dose of light suffering to get the job done right.
Well, it's spring in Montana. It's blazing hot one day, and we got a snowstorm the next. But of course, I forgot to measure the window opening, so I had to drive all the way out here on the four-wheeler to get the measurement so we can work on windows. Okay, let's get the measurements and get back to the shop. Back in the shop. Okay, so forgive the wild hair. That was a wild ATV ride. The width looks pretty good. The width is 28 and our rough opening is 29 max, so that should fit perfectly.
Okay, with one of the windows made, we can do a test fit. It's the moment of truth, to see if they fit and if they look right.
Should fit.
Part of why we're going to the effort to save this little shack is because back in the day when this spot was America's frontier, a pioneer made a choice to build this house in this way. He had a handful of choices for how to make a house. He could have built a soddy that was usually a dugout with a dirt roof, quick to make and warm in the winter, or he could have built a log cabin. A great choice if your land has plenty of trees. Log cabins have thick walls to protect you, and you don't need a lot of tools to construct one. Or option 3 was a stick-built house. This required sawmilled boards. This choice would have been a little bit fancy, but not quite as fancy as a stone house, which would have been the Rolls-Royce of the time period. Records show our cabin's original homesteader owned a sawmill back in 1889. He would have had access to lots of lumber, and that's likely why he chose option 3, stick-built. But the way he built it is pretty piecemeal. Scraps of board here and there, and yet a cedar shingle roof and very large window openings for the day. Kind of fancy choices. The whole thing is making us scratch our heads. We are about to do a totally unconventional thing when it comes to historic preservation. We can't take the professionals' approach, which would be to jack up this house and have a team work gingerly underneath to save every board and rebuild the foundation. The boards are shot, the floor is shot, the smell is unbearable. So, we're making our own route. As we jump into this big moment in the project, we just want to say if you are enjoying this whole process of renovation with us, even the ups and downs, share it with your friends and subscribe to the channel. We need your moral support on this train wreck of a day. Okay, back into it. We're about to cut the corners of this house free and fold it over. It's a drastic step. We just keep telling ourselves this is a journey we're on here. We'd rather have a story to tell than a perfect renovation. At the end of the day, it's a heck of an adventure in a beautiful place. If today felt major, and even tragic, it was. But Uncle Dan's cabin is coming back. A bit newer and fresher than we had planned at the start, but it is coming back. The house is in pieces, but it is not gone. Next up, we'll tackle the floor and stacking the stone foundation. A lot of fresh boards have been waiting, eager to save the architecture. Along the way, we've been asking ourselves if it really is possible to bring a house back to life. Maybe it isn't, and a small piece of history is gone forever.
And here's where the old rotten beams sat. Each corner got a stone, and then the wood sat right on the ground. And we're just gonna follow that line. We're gonna put down stone instead of wood, and we'll build the floor off of that. But it's right in line with where everything was. It's just gonna be a little bit newer, that's all.
We are rebuilding a house out here on the Montana prairie. To do that, we literally had to explode this house into 5 parts. It's not to destroy it though, it's to save it. If we are going to have 4 stone foundation walls built using no mortar, then we need to lift and move these old cabin walls. We'll show you what we did with them in just a minute, and they are not getting burned. We're saving the square nails and stacking old boards that we pried off the outside of Uncle Dan's cabin. Every bit of history means something to us. If we can put it back into the rebuilt house, we will.
All right, these are the rocks we've got to work with. We're gonna go with the biggest ones first, and do all the corners, and then we'll work down to the smaller ones. But every rock is important. We need just as many small pack rocks as we do giant perfect cubes.
It's time for the stone foundation work to begin. Some people cannot wrap their heads around this stonework. They get very angry. This foundation is about to be made without mortar. No deep footings, just raw stone, intelligently stacked one on top of another, locking the wall together. To the people who think we've just made up this technique, well, they're wrong. This is an ancient method that is still used today. Jesse studied with the Dry Stone Conservancy to learn how to do this. It's not a common approach for sure, but you may be surprised just how practical it is.
And as much as it seems like, oh yeah, you just throw a bunch of stones on top of each other, that's not exactly, I mean, it's pretty simple. I only have one tool with me today, and that's a hammer, and you don't even really need that for the type of wall I'm building, which is just rubble stone. But basically, there are a few principles that you have to stick to, or else the wall just falls down. So to build a wall that lasts actually takes more skill than you'd think, and I'm an amateur. This is not a perfect example of how to build a wall, but this is a good example of if you have a lot of irregular stones, not the best stone, all of that, you can still build a quality foundation wall. You just have to use the principles. It's basically frictional force and gravity. These walls can last, well over 1,000 years. How many things can you say that about in today's world? I don't know. I'm not saying this will last 1,000 years. This has a lot of stones like this. Pretty hard to use. Even with my hammer, which is just a bricky hammer. It's nothing special. If I can get anything flat, it helps. Flat surfaces are better. And bigger stones are better. But you know what? We use what we got. We use what we got.
Back in January, Jesse was excited to tell me a little bit about how everything would come together. So you use a lot of the shimrocks?
Yeah, so anything that's like a thin, tight wedge. So let's say we stack 2 of these on top of each other, and there's just a little wiggle room. Mm-hmm. Something like a shimrock slips in and locks. And then this won't shift anymore. So they're simple and they're small, but they make everything lock super tight.
To throw it back to those original walls and what we did with them, you saw how we stacked all 4 gingerly just outside the hayfields. We did this for a reason. We love this old house. We are rebuilding it in order to save its architecture, to save the way it has looked for all these years, standing alone in a field just off a remote Montana highway, a marker of the long-gone western frontier. Any bits of the original that we can hold on to, we are tucking away. We took special care with the north wall, as it has a great patina to the boards. We're hoping to bring the entire wall back into the rebuilt 1889 house.
For every 3 foot by 3 foot section of dry stone wall, that's 1 ton of stone, which is that is just a massive amount. When you think that every single rock is placed by hand. You might move it with a skid steer here or there, which is a godsend, but At the end of the day, every single one of these rocks gets put in and lifted at least once, but because I'm not very good at it, more likely twice by hand. Oh, but man, is it fun. I just love this work. I just have to backpin it.
This foundation has no mortar in it. It's just a bunch of little and big field stones stacked together. But we can walk on it and build a house on it without the stones moving because every piece is laid in a particular way.
Can you guys hear it? Here come the sandhill cranes. There's 4 of them. They're coming in. They're calling to each other. That's amazing. Just out here working in the rain. You see so much life when you're just out here being quiet. No machines, no tools, just stacking stones. It's starting to rain out here too. Might have to finish up here pretty soon. But we made a ton of progress today.
It's a new day, and the cows are getting moved out to the spring pasture on the ranch. The stone foundation is almost finished. Next step we need to take is rebuilding the floor. And we are beefing this element up too, by milling heavy wooden beams off of which the floor joists will hang. The original floor of the 1889 house that sat here was absolutely shot, rotted from the bottom up. Not to mention, it had a lot of life living on and under it over the years. We aren't going to buy off-the-shelf flooring or lumber for this. We're going to start by milling 10-inch by 8-inch pine beams, and then there will be homemade floor joists to cut, all from the pines that sat just up the ridge here. Robbie has been sawmilling throughout the winter, but when we got to this stage we realized we needed massive dimensions, larger than anything we had already cut. So he knocked over a few more trees, threw them on the mill, and now we have custom dimensions and beams for this project. The green wood will shrink a bit, but all the pieces are mortised and pinned together. Back in the day, green wood is what they used on projects like this, and that's good enough for us.
Well guys, I think we got it done. It feels pretty good. I'm sore, but considering we've got about a 2-foot thick by over 2-foot tall wall in places, yeah, I'm pretty pleased with that. I think we'll just have to come back once we get the beams on, the wooden beams. I'm gonna come back with some thin shim stones, and I'm just gonna pack tightly underneath it. And that should seal it up better. I mean, little things are gonna be able to get in, but nothing big. And I mean, if I did this right, you shouldn't be able to see daylight through it or anything. A mouse shouldn't be able to get in, but if they do, they do. It's a homestead house in the country. I'm kind of okay with that. We're thinking we might put a trap door in the floor. That way, if we ever need to get down underneath here, we can. Plus, it's a good place to hide the gold.
Our aim is to bring back 100% of the original architecture, the overall look of the place, while replacing the rot and adding a few historically appropriate improvements. This foundation is one of those improvements. The original house had stone cornerstones, but not much else. We've taken the path of improvement in an historically sympathetic way. The pioneer who built this house originally would hopefully be pleased. And just in time, the major stonework is done. Here comes Robbie with heaps of freshly sawmilled beams and boards. It won't be long till the skunky floor that disappeared last week is rebuilt by the end of this one.
Sounded not good. Yeah, they're a little opposite. This one needs to tip up and this one needs to tip up that way.
Just hold it like that.
Okay.
So this one I think could stand to be shimmed up,
Yeah, just a touch.
and that will pull that side down a touch.
Yep. And it'll
I
be
think.
perfect. Okay.
Not have you blind.
The dry stone foundation is done. The massive pine beams are in, shimmed, and level. Well, level-ish. Now Robbie's headed out with the home sawn joists. He'll come back with custom metal joist hangers later. But for now, these beams are pinned and the start of the floor is just around the corner. This is a major milestone to get to. Stone from the land and trees from the forest have given this old homestead a fresh base. The old original walls are awaiting their return. This history isn't gone. Last week it was so cold that the crops hadn't popped up yet. This week they are growing like crazy. It's a hopeful time for farmers. In between farm work, like moving cows to pasture and prepping haying equipment, this 1889 project is continuing forward at a quick pace. Uncle Dan's has its foundation back, and a proper floor is nearly on it. At the 6-month mark, we've worked through a harsh Montana winter and into a cold, wet spring. We're at a major growth spurt for this build. The floor is going on this week, and the walls will be raised before long. We've taken the time and energy with this build to research the history of its original homesteader and the larger time period this house was created in. The historic building methods and the ways people lived off the frontier are a huge part of this project. And even with the research and inspiration, we're pretty detached from simple living in our modern world. This house takes us back to how life was not all that long ago, and just what a man can make when he sources trees and stones from the land around him. Under the old house's rotten floor and around its walls, we've been finding lots of small treasures: axe heads, bullet casings, and a whistle. Last week, Jesse finished building the stone foundation. Robbie milled massive beams and joists. And I, Clayton, have been walking you through the story as your narrator. Today, we are putting a solid floor back on this place. And, as a bonus, we will go explore another abandoned homestead on the ranch. There's something inside we might be able to save. Back here at Uncle Dan's, just like a pioneer might have thought to do, we need a spot to hide the valuables.
So for these 1-bys, we're going to use these 11-inch screws to hold them down.
You sure that's going to be enough?
Yeah, well, we're going to do those, and then we'll have 2 of these toe nailed in at angles, from either angle. So the 1x8 will look like that.
And you sure that's still going to be enough?
We might have to come up from the bottom.
Okay.
And then grind what's sticking out off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And underneath all of the boards, you're going to put glue, right?
Yes, we're going to put Sikaflex. And we're actually, because of the basement below, we're worried about the floor squeaking. So we're going to put a foam gasket around everything.
Jokes aside, let's get into how Robbie really built this floor. Here is the main work of this week. The floor we put down needs to match the original house we had. So we're going to mill it ourselves and then nail it down. The original builders didn't do tongue and groove like we expected. It was just a double layer of board over board. And that's what we'll recreate. We'll do the first layer now, let the sun bleach any remaining moisture out of the boards, which prevents mold from forming, and then put a second layer of boards on once the walls are up. It's been some work just getting to this point. We've saved what we could of the original house in hopes of bringing back the boards and even entire walls. It's still up in the air if we will be able to do some of that. Abandoned houses have a lot of life that lives in them, making for some unpleasant smells. What we absolutely are saving is the architecture of this place, and we're following in history's footsteps with many of the same building materials and methods. The sawmill and some tools might be new, but the principles of using your own trees and turning them into boards for a house is old school.
Hey, Uncle Pete!
Oh. Yeah, or not half, but
Pretty daggone close. Oh, I know.
You didn't give her these posts.
Oh, yeah.
In the middle of it, but that probably
We got the whole family helping out. This is how you do building projects with little kids. You set up a tent.
Look at the tent.
That looks good.
Hello.
Okay.
So the cut edge is on that end.
Okay.
Line that one up.
Want it on the line? Okay. They'll reuse that as grip.
That's what I've been doing, but these joists, these aren't spaced correctly to just.
I gotcha.
God damn it. Nail.
The sun is high in the sky, beating down on us. It takes a bit to get into the swing of things, but these last boards are getting cut and nailed down quickly and smoothly, now that we've found our rhythm. And the Pioneer trapdoor? Well, just a few more cuts and it's done. And there you have it, a place to hide the gold, or shoot some marmots at the least. The planning and milling for this floor has been a long, drawn-out process. With the grunt work of milling and hammering the floorboards done, let's go take a quick break. There is another abandoned homestead on the far side of this ranch that is about to fall in, but it's still full of romance and charm, and it has something inside that we are hoping we can use.
George, do not waste this water. No way, the water's not on.
So this was an old homestead house of a Croatian immigrant family. They came over here and became coal miners and then worked themselves up substantially from there. Like one of the daughters went on to go to university in the early 1900s, which is pretty impressive for rural Montana, but they had humble beginnings. Nobody's lived in here for probably 90 years. That key is long gone.
Cool.
Underneath here is a giant stone-walled basement that I really don't want to fall through, so I'm going to walk very, very gingerly on this floor. I thought the table was going to be a little more dry rotted. It's actually in pretty decent shape. Stone walls. That is too cool. The Croatian immigrants were really talented with stonework. They built a lot of the stone buildings in our town. This table has tons of character. Maybe not tons of craftsmanship, but it's got a really cool look to it. Okay, let's get it back to the shop, see if we can hose it off, clean it up, make do.
I'm loving how this table turned out. Would I want to eat breakfast at it every day? No. But what's the goal of this project? It's loving history, keeping in touch with the past, feeling the age of things long gone. This has the old circle saw marks, old nails, the feel that a man cobbled it together quickly to solve a need. It's fun to experience that. So yeah, this is the perfect table for this project.
Look at the light. Oh.
Hey, George, come here. Shush. What's down there, bud? You think it's a gopher hole?
If you guys are loving the history, the old school building methods, or even just Montana's scenic beauty, we want to say thanks for watching this series. Last week, we welcomed a lot of new viewers to the channel, and to celebrate, we got some killer shirts made. Well, we ordered them back when just a handful of friends were watching. But if you guys want to support and purchase one, click the link in the video description to check them out.
Well, that'll do. What do you think?
You have to figure out how we rebuild it now.
Well, that may not have been the easiest or the quickest thing to do, but oh man. We've managed to get one step closer to saving a piece of the original fabric of the house. It's not in the world's greatest shape, but man, it's got gorgeous patina. It's got the actual circle saw boards, the square nails, the M's and the scratch marks from children long from the past. If we can actually pull off lifting this thing up, getting it vertical and back into space, that'll be a real accomplishment.
While the prep work gets us ready to set this wall back in place, where it has stood for 135 years, here's a first-hand account of what pioneer life and homesteading was really like back in the days when this house was brand new. Back when the government issued cheap land through the Homestead Act, and people came west to a wild and harsh place. This poem was written by a forgotten woman homesteader who survived alone out in the American prairie.
I'll write a few lines if only I can, and tell you about my excellent plan. You'll find me out here on a West Bench plain, working hard on a government claim. Hurrah for this country, the land of the free, home of the rattlesnake, bugs, and the flea. Oh, I tell of its joys and sing of its fame, while starving out here on my government claim. My mansion is built so it doesn't cover much soil, the walls erected according to Hoyle. The roof hasn't much pitch, it's quite level and plain, and I'll sure get wet if ever it rains. I have a good time, I live at my ease, on canned goods, old crackers, bacon, and cheese. Then come to this country, there's a home for you all, where the wind never ceases and the rain never falls, where the sun never sets but sweetly remains, till it burns up our crops on our government claims.
So these were trees that were cut down winter of 2020. Cut them in 6-inch cants and stickered them, built a cabin out of most of them, and this is what we had left. They were still in cants with live edges on both ends, and so I knocked those off and cut them in 2-inch lengths. Not knowing what we need yet, I just left them in the full length, so we'll have plenty of length on each piece. And we made them 2x5s so that when you add 1 inch on the inside and 2 inches on the outside, you get 8 inches thick. Every bit of 20 foot long.
So what are the actual dimensions?
2 inches by 5 inches by 20 foot 3-ish.
Is that what they originally were, or are we beefing them out to?
Oh, on the house they were 2x4s. But we'll have a tighter spacing, and we wanted a little bit deeper of a wall. More room for mice to pack wheat and poop in. Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
When we spray foam it, we can get more spray foam in there too for our value.
Mom, I don't know how to get down.
We knew that no matter what, we would have to bring in a lot of fresh wood for this project. The years of neglect made that inevitable. That's not unusual for historic old houses. I'd bet most famous preserved houses from history that you've toured, whether it's Abe Lincoln's birthplace or Mozart's house, well, probably only a percentage of the actual fabric, the plaster, the wood, was truly there from the start. Even delicate restorations must repair and replace a great deal. We've waited out storms and watched them roll through. It's early morning now, and Robbie is out at Uncle Dan's, trying to get the game plan set for raising the north wall. Jessie is on her way, and we better get to work soon before the wildlife reclaims Uncle Dan's all over again.
That was a weasel. I think those are the ones that turn all white in the winter. There's a lot of life in these walls. Dry stone walls are living walls. I wouldn't recommend it for every house, but I think it's too cool for this one.
The peace of the morning didn't last long as we jumped straight into putting the north wall back where it stood for over a century.
Down a little. Down? Down just a little bit. anytime I push it this way, in theory that other end should try to pivot around. What if we should have had this on the ground and I could have been standing in the doorway. What if we drop it with me in the doorway? That'd be funny. So as it comes back, it'll need to go up.
There you go. There you go.
Ah.
We aren't stopping with the north wall. There's still time to start framing up the fresh new walls before haying season kicks off with a bang.
So that means that's going to be 205 and an 8, or 205 normal.
The true 2x5 rough sawn walls are built on the ground and will then be raised up into place. Of course, rough sawn lumber is not perfect, and it takes more fiddling than we'd like, but knowing that the wood for this project has come from the surrounding trees, well, it adds something special.
I'm not going to ever say that I know what I'm doing. That would be a lie. You got a fireball.
Want something more aggressive?
Yeah.
The original north wall from 1889 is up. It's braced to withstand the wind. Humble though it may be, this wall is a direct connection to history. The fresh new wood for stud walls will go together quickly. The dimensions for the new walls are the same as they once were, windows in all the same spots, just framed out a bit sturdier than the original. It's time to close the gates and keep the cows out of the hayfields in the cabin. With the walls standing in place, I think it's safe to call this a house again. This little green valley probably looks a lot like it did back in 1889 when a pioneer first showed up here. I'm sure he had a house half built and lots of farm work to do, and so it is today. Robbie is getting ready to start haying in just a day or two, so Uncle Dan's will sit patiently until the urgent farm work is done. We'll be back to put those fresh walls up before too long.
Alright, it's already in the 90s this morning, but this is the stuff we got to spray onto the old north wall. So we had some great comments in some of our past videos giving us ideas on what to do. Most of the other walls were too far shot, but we really wanted to bring back at least one of the walls. This north wall is in the best shape of all 4 of them. And now we need to try and get rid of any smells that are still left. I don't know, even though there's lap joints built into this, I think we might need to get a resident house cat. Make sure the mice don't come back. Name him Uncle Dan. It's back to get kids, and maybe this afternoon we'll be able to come back out and do some more.
Look, it works out not perfect, just like the ox.
206 and a quarter.
Okay.
This year's income all boils down to the hay crop for us. Robbie has loaded the kids into the tractor, and they're out cutting the fields. Then comes raking and baling. This is the necessary work of the ranch, and this old homestead house just has to wait patiently in the Montana sun for the field work to be finished. The days are long, but full of family meals out on the land. This is, after all, a project done by family and friends. This is it, the final wall. We've spent many days harvesting timber from these hills, sawmilling it into sturdy 2x5 studs. And now, the moment of truth, raising the last wall. Our tools may be modern, but our goal is to recapture the spirit of this place, as it stood over a century ago, back in 1889. The east wall is up. The front door and window openings are framed. All 4 walls make it look like a house again. Robbie continues on with a seemingly endless job of haying. This grass will feed animals all through the long Montana winter. The kids are learning to ride along and be good sports, even when it's hot and they don't want to be outside on the ranch. But they're helpful and they're needed. Summer is a full-on sprint. Even so, Uncle Dan's cabin is moving along and is indeed a house again. Well, minus the whole having a roof thing, and that will come soon enough. And should the world fall apart in the meantime, and we find ourselves in need of a doomsday spot, I can't think of a more picturesque one than this.
I think I'm gonna push this board tight to this north wall,
Okay.
and then we'll suck it. Yep.
Got it.
Okay, that's in.
Going to leave.
Robbie has left Jesse and our metal detecting friend Brad to the job of tying together all 4 walls. If this is going to be a house again, then we need this place built strong. This overlapping is critical to making a tight box that can take the wind and abuse of Montana weather. Returning the original north wall threw a wrench into things, but Robbie got his mind working on it and figured out a way to tie it all together. Now it's just a matter of time of finding the right boards, cutting them to length, and lifting them to the top of the house. Simple jobs, but with important results.
Here he comes. He's gonna tell us if we did it wrong. Uh-oh, he's got his mean face on. You gotta come judge our work.
Perfect. You need that on video. Worked out good, didn't it?
No, I think it's tight.
Yeah.
We got the top plate over the top of it all.
Perfect. Perfect. Is it flush up there? I mean, is it?
Yeah.
It's sitting on that one.
Yeah. Oh no, it's a good fit.
Okay. For that one. No, this corner. It's just don't get too crazy nailing it. I just have to get the planer and the generator and. No.
Okay.
Probably ought to put that brace back up.
Oh really?
Yep. Because that's the shear force in it. There's not really any shear force. You could push on that wall and all these would still just tip over.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
that
keeping.
Makes sense.
Until you put the boards on the wall,
yeah,
we need to have those angles on there.
Okay, we can put those back on.
Anyway. Is that where you want this?
I think so. This one's screwed to the floor, this one's screwed. Let's do it. Hope for the best.
Robbie pops in and out from Uncle Dan's, in between hauling bales and delivering them to local ranchers. While the farm work goes on all around us, with grasses being cut and baled, work on this 1889 house carries on. The final 20-foot long top plates go into place. We've used our own rough-sawn lumber for every piece of this renovation. The beefy 2x5s cut on the band sawmill are all a bit unique, never cookie cutter, but this house from history deserves homegrown and handmade materials. It may be humble, but the authenticity of this place is what gives it its charm. These Montana storms can get serious fast.
Alright, I guess we won't. Oh, I was gonna try and beat the storm. I guess we'll have to wait a little longer.
Mom, can we go now?
Alright, I think we all need a break. Let's go into town and do something fun. What do you think?
We've been given a good excuse to go to town and blow off some steam together, and tonight just lucks out to be the county fair and rodeo.
The championship of the Rosebud County Fair in Forsyth was won on this horse. That is a powder mill bus and a bump truck.
And as soon as the last day ends, a new day begins. Back to the fields for Robbie, and into the old barn for Jesse, to sort the original siding and weathered wood. This wood isn't getting sold off or used elsewhere. It's going back from where it came, back into Uncle Dan's. We still call this house Uncle Dan's, all these years later in honor of the man who built it. He was a westward pioneer and a man who owned his own sawmill at the time. No doubt the same sawmill that furnished these boards. All of these came off the 1889 homestead when we started this renovation. These are the prized pieces we're able to save. We gingerly pried each board off, pulled the square nails, and sorted every one of these pieces of history by hand. And for 135 years they've held on. We're hoping to give them a few more years, back in their same spots.
This is the door that came off it. The debate is, do we try to take it apart and reuse, kind of rebuild it to look the same with the same wood on the outside, but maybe do a layer of fresh wood on the inside to stabilize it, because it's, yeah. So we almost, it's like we make a new fresh door and then we just
put that on top.
side.
I would do it that way.
Yeah.
Because it's, like you said, you took it off of it.
It keeps a certain, I mean, people touch this for 100 years.
If you can keep any of the old stuff, in my opinion,
Yeah.
I would. This is cool.
What we're building here right now in the shop is the architecture, the look of the place. The original roof and trusses were on the verge of caving in. These fresh trusses mirror the old ones we've pulled off of Uncle Dan's, almost to a T. Of course, the originals were sagging, some were split, and some were just plain missing as far as engineering needs go. So slight improvements, yes, are being made. But man, really not that much. I mean, we're using homegrown trees and home sawmilled lumber.
Go up. Through in.
Now, we're gonna make this look quick and easy, but of course in real time it was not. Nothing fit quite right. Nothing was angled quite right. But through troubleshooting, things got done. It took Robbie's dad Mel and our friend Brad coming out to help us get it done. But man, what a job checked off the list.
It's perfect.
Trouble with putting these screws in your mouth, every now and then you swallow one.
That was a multi-person job. That was
Yeah,
not
that would've
something.
That's been hard to do by you.
Yeah. I think I told Robbie, like, Robbie, just go, can you just go do the trusses and just get it done? I had no idea.
I think it looks great.
Yeah.
That's huge getting that up.
That is. I was asking Brad if he wants cedar shingle or if he'd go with corrugated, either galvanized or like gray.
That's what I would do, but
You'd go with metal?
I would.
I'm 50-50. I'm 50-50. But
And then the rest of it can be as antique and stuff as you want, but if the roof is,
yeah,
I mean, that's just me. They could take that much away.
I just don't know if you'll look at it and be like, well,
But Robbie might have a different
they missed
point
a
of
trick.
view.
Robbie, metal or cedar? Which one?
I'd put it up metal if you put it up cedar.
Clayton, what would you do?
A severe thunderstorm warning has been issued. This house, as it stands now, exposed, is extremely vulnerable to the wind. It just takes one good gust, and the roofline and walls can go down. All we can do now is watch and wait until morning to see if Uncle Dan's is still upright. Phew, all is well. But this storm reminded us of an important factor in choosing a roof for this house. Extreme weather. Extreme cold, extreme hail. It certainly is no picnic. In the 1800s, the choices were pretty limited. Cedar shingles were pretty much the only strong choice, at least out here on the prairie. Sod roofs or just plain pine boards were the cheap options. And this house got the best. It got cedar.
I know a bit about cedar shingles. I restored this old log house and I spent my 20s living off grid where I laid an entire roof. Took me about an entire summer, no joke. Every cedar shingle by hand. I found out pretty fast how cedar holds up in our Montana climate. It's so arid and windy and hot here in the summer that it just sucks the life out of cedar shingles. The lifespan of cedar here just isn't good. So I think you guys can see where we're going with this. Cedar is out and metal is in.
To those out there feeling a bit disappointed to hear we didn't bring back cedar for the roof, 3 sides of this house need a fresh skin of all new boards. That has to happen. But I think we may have just enough if we scrimp and steal from all the perfect boards we saved to make the entire final layer of the east wall, the front entry wall, out of original weathered boards from 1889. The strength of the new boards will keep the house sound, and the beauty of the old boards will give it life. I'm usually behind the camera, but today we all get to pitch in to get the siding boards up. First things first, the mountain of sawmilled wood that Robbie made over the winter needs to go up for the subcutaneous layer of skin on this house. We're copying exactly what the original pioneer did here for siding.
George, you see the window?
Look at that, bud. It's a window.
Look at the window.
Whoa.
Look at the window. One more time. So, this is the first layer of boards we're putting up. And as you can see, there are gaps, and as this wood dries even more, it will shrink. And so what they did before on this, and what we're going to do also, is we're going to come back and we're going to split that gap with another board. And even if that one opens, it will seal it up. It's not as ideal as if you had a vertical, but it's what was on here, and it's what we're going to do again. So this is a board over board type of siding.
Oh yeah, I see it. Nice. Cool.
Oh, no, okay, one more time. Okay, try it. 7s, 5s, 4s, and 10s.
Okay.
Those are all 1x10. Those are 1x12s.
Yep.
The boards are flying, and now the whole gang can get this thing finished. With each person carrying their individual task, the whole job starts to move at a pretty fast clip. When we can sneak in a bite to eat or grab a sip of water, there are some Pioneer favorites on hand. Jesse's mom brought a classic sourdough loaf, and there's another simple staple on the table, Scottish shortbread. The recipe for it was dug up this week by our local librarians when we went in to do some historical research on this project. Sue and Drew were able to find some of the earliest cookbooks from the state of Montana. And well, we had to try one of these classics. So we made this turn-of-the-century version, complete with the old-fashioned spice cardamom. This recipe from 1900 is probably much older, and was no doubt made in cabins across the prairie here. Certainly a taste of history, just right for this Pioneer project.
Good? So this bag is full of brand new nails made just recently, but they're made exactly the way the original nails were. So these are the original square nails that came out of Uncle Dan's. And these ones are exactly the same. We found the coolest little company back east. What's it called? Tremont Nail? A man came home from the Civil War, founded this company, and his great-great-great-grandson is still running it today. And they make the nails on the same machinery that they did way back then. It's a pretty cool company. We watched a video on how they do it. Even the machines you can't get parts for anymore, so they make their own parts for the machine. But anyway, these nails are gonna be how we attach the new wall to the old boards. And I'm about to go get those boards now.
But first, this house needs to be wrapped in tar paper, just like it was back in the day. The original stuff is blowing around in small pieces on the prairie. This black stuff is a bit more modern, but it's close to the original.
You gotta whack them. Holy smokes. Brad, this is gonna be your job. Jeez. Oh. Half this house is really old, and the other half is brand new. We literally milled the boards this year. Nature will gray everything up eventually, but that's not soon enough for us. So let's give this house our best tricks. Something for the roof, something for the siding, maybe even something special for the Pioneer cast iron. I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell if it's working. It's been about an hour, but the sun's starting to go down. I don't know how much of a difference that makes. All we're really looking to do, just knock the real intense shine off of it. Is that glare, that glare is gonna make somebody crash on the highway. We'd love it if this new galvanized, sooner rather than later, started to get a little more like the old galvanized. That weathered zinc gray kind of look. But you know, that usually takes about, 80 years. So I don't know. I hope this hack accelerates the process a little bit. I'm a pretty impatient person.
What do you have to say?
We picked up tin up in Great Falls yesterday. We're gonna try to get it on this morning, but we have to sort it, pre-drill the holes, put the underlayment on. So I gotta get started early. Made it to the shop this morning. Hopefully we got some much needed rain on the way coming down from Canada, so enough that we want to get this roof on. And it's always nice before help shows up to be organized. I don't always know what I'm doing, so it takes me longer to get organized. Well, we have a little birthday treat this morning. Jesse doesn't let me have these, and we can't cook them at home. We don't have a microwave, but guess what? We have one in the shop. So this is my birthday treat today. We had these when I was on the harvest crew every morning and got tired of them, but I always pull the cheese off.
Did you have your second cup of coffee? You ready for today?
I did have my second cup.
Oh, sorry.
Did the chemical acid aging help? Sort of.
Some of those sheets are just dirtier, but there's a distinct difference in some of them.
I'm not going to tell you why.
Why?
All of these are the ones that had the toilet bowl cleaner.
Yeah.
Some had your heavy thing and some didn't.
But I think we're realizing it's going to take more than this to get what we need.
Ready?
Without a good roof, things disappear. They slowly melt into the ground. There are some amazing bits of history that have been or are being lost to time right now. Places and ways of life that we'll never see again. So humble as this little homestead shack is, we're putting our blood and sweat into it because it marks a way of life that is about to be forgotten. The ways our grandparents and great-grandparents lived, often very simply off the land, well, we could do with remembering those quieter times. Especially in our hectic contemporary world. There's wisdom to be rescued. If you guys want to save some history with us and keep pioneer stories from disappearing, or become a channel member, your support buys square nails and puts a roof on this place. Next projects, we hope to be rescuing the Dovetail Log Barn and the Railroad Cook Car. So come along with us. Okay, right now let's eat something and then get this roof finished.
Okay, so we've got the hot oil going. The donuts are coming. Our first test one is well cooked, and that's good enough for me. Now it's time for more. I don't know if if you'd call these true donuts. They don't really have much sugar in them. But what they do have is the ability to put sugar on them. And that's kind of what we're gonna do. So once these guys are done, we will roll them in cinnamon sugar. And then we have plum jam from our own plum tree. Right, guys?
Yep.
I'm curious to dip these in that and see how that tastes. I'm sure this is the sort of recipe that a pioneer, you know, when he was building this house the first time, he probably camped out here with his family. And this is probably the sort of food they would have cooked. After all, they didn't have an oven yet. They didn't have a cook stove. So something like frying over an open fire, yeah, that's probably how they cooked.
Here, I'm gonna let you push it up a little bit.
You good or more?
Yeah, no, I'm good there.
Okay.
Well, that is funny, those two sheets are different.
Yeah.
But they're not as bad. I swear, Jesse, from the other side.
Yeah.
I swear from the other side, they're darker than the rest.
I wonder if there is an angle.
I want to be surprised, but you can also see some streaking. I mean, it isn't perfectly.
No, but it did something.
So if we spread glue up there, or honey, and then we just sprinkle dirt.
Well, I'm a little bit tempted.
And then we get Brad to dance up there and scratch it in.
That would be frightful.
I am tempted to just go up on the lift and scrub it again with that stuff.
Spoiler alert, our acid trick helped, but once this roof started going on, we realized that we have to take it further. The shine is just still too much. So we have to do this the hard way. And let's just say it's about to get a little weird. All will be explained, but first, Jesse has to climb up to the peak.
Well, I won't lie, this is a much harder way to do this. But we're getting it.
We did wrap the roof in modern underlayment, mostly for grip. This roof is steeper than any of us would like to be on. And yeah, we wouldn't recommend doing it this way, so this had better be worth it.
What are you guys building? Haha. Ah, jeez. Ouch. Well, I spilled acid on my pants. We're gonna finish up the rest of this job. At least there's nobody out here to see me, right? Hey, you. That burned. No joke. Stuff may be over the counter, but it's still acid. Okay, Dad. Does it look like I had a little accident?
Yeah.
Yeah, down just the one side. At least it doesn't burn anymore.
I found a tip that is a fire lighter. Fly on the Mama.
Oh, okay.
Watch this on here.
Go.
And then go ahead and pause it.
Well, we'll give that a bunch of time in the sun and we'll just see how that works. All right, weather report says big storms coming in, anywhere from 1/4 inch to 3.5 inches. So I'm picking up every power drill we have, getting them back to the shop. We'll see what happens.
A gentle rain is rolling through. Don't you wonder if pioneers could read the weather? I bet this one would have surprised them. A good soaking and muddy roads have put us out of commission for a few days. But luckily, Jesse had tackled putting in the very first window before the storm hit. This is the first window this place has seen since the 1930s or so. This house has gone almost 100 years without any windows in it. All the original ones from the 1800s were broken out when this place was turned into a grain bin back in the day.
Old cedar shingle nails. They stick out just enough to catch the window. All of this trim and most of this east wall, these are actually the original boards from the roof. So they were covered in cedar shingle, tiny nails. But those were the only boards we were able to really save. All the walls on the outside were originally put in with square nails, and you cannot pull the square nails out once they're in. They form this bond with the wood that is basically the wood just shatters around the nail. We lost a lot of boards trying to get them off this house. I've tried spraying this stuff on before and it works, but you kind of have to go over and over and over it. If you use a brush, it works a lot better.
This solution is meant to jumpstart the graying process of the pine. It's a very simple recipe that's just accelerating the oxidation. Steel wool is soaked in white vinegar for 24 hours. This creates iron acetate, which reacts with the tannins in the wood. The lid is kept off to allow gases to escape.
Hydrogen gas comes off of here.
Then the steel wool is removed. The lid goes on and the magic aging solution is ready to paint. When the sunlight hits these boards, they'll get 10 years older in a matter of minutes.
It's slowly going. Give it another week. It'll really start to show. At first, it kind of starts to look like a 1950s John Wayne Western movie set. I think that's a fair criticism. But this finish, just like the galvanized roof and the stone, they're living finishes. So with time and sun and rain, basically they're always changing. So it's not like our modern stuff where it's kind of one and done. These, they're gonna show every scar and every summer and every winter of their lives. It's meant to grow and change. Yeah, we just don't really build houses like that anymore. But another thing that I kind of wanted to mention, I think it's an easy accident with renovation shows, and we're guilty of this too. You can make it look like, wham bam, we did this, and then we did this, and then it was smooth and we did that. And that's just not reality. We try to show when things work and we try to show when things don't, but it's really easy to not show how many times we had to run to our local farm and ranch store, or how many times the kids interrupted because they needed to go to the bathroom or they needed something else, or how many times we made them stay an extra hour so we could finish something when they really just wanted to go home. You know, all those moments, those are a part of projects. And so, yeah, I hope people know it's real life. And as much as it's easy to just show the highlights, all of that stuff is happening at the same time too. There's a lot more than just highlight reels. But it's a lot of fun too. I hope some silly hack like this, maybe you'll try it out. I don't know, big or small. Projects give you total sense of accomplishment. Highly recommend it.
Before we jump-started this weathering process, we did the same thing the pioneer first did when he built this place. We gave it a good layer of tar paper. Some people stopped at this step, hence the tar paper shacks on the prairies. These were the best that the very poor could do. And this house got one better. It got horizontal siding.
To try to save. Okay. So those ones, they're dark or whatever, but these ones have the...
So we still have some of the old tar paper on this house, just kicking around in the field. This is the layer that was in between the two boards. It's just paper pulp. We couldn't find exactly the same thing, but we're going with paper coated in tar. That's as close to the original as we can get, but at least it's not plastic siding. So this one is the modern equivalent of that. You can reach it, Brad.
I don't know.
This house was originally covered with a final layer of horizontal pine boards, all from trees cut right here on the land. Some people look down on pine, but for us, it's our pine. It's noble, and it'll do.
When my soul shall sally forth, let it be to the naked north, and in a lone pine desolate, achieve its fit and final fate. A pine by Arctic tempest torn, snow-scourged, wind-savaged, and forlorn. A Viking trunk, a warrior tree, a hostage to dark destiny. Of iron earth and icy sky, that valiantly disdains to die. Here is the home where I would bide, if trees like men had souls inside, which is, of course, a fantasy. None could conceive but dolts like me, that others vision heaven's gate, Dark pine, I dream. For me you wait.
It's Robbie's 33rd birthday today. Time to clean up and get ready for a party out here.
All right, let's go get kids and we'll come back out later.
This was a tough year for Dad. Me and George both had birthdays on Tuesdays.
So there you have it. Every week, this house is going to look even older, thanks to some of these tricks that we've tried. Some worked brilliantly, some were a struggle, but the end result is good. The outside of this house is starting to look right. A big thanks to Brad for his much needed help. Let's get into a job at the heart of this build, something lost to this house for 100 years.
All right, so we're starting in on windows today. We've got one of them in, but we have 3 tall, giant tall ones to go in. We have 1 more small one to go in. And then hopefully we're gonna get to the front door too. We saved the original. But we've also got the campfire going. I'm gonna show you guys what we're doing with that in a sec. If you can hear it in my voice, I'm fighting a cold. So I've got kind of a pioneer remedy that they would have used back in the day. We went out on the land and picked some things. We're gonna try what the pioneers did. It's a little trick. We're gonna test that out. So yeah. 1 window, and then we're going to the campfire. Let's get into it. All right, the first window I want to get in is the south window. This is the most prominent one. You can see it from the highway. I think it's a good one to start with. It's done. No, actually, Robbie came back and it was the sweetest gift. Our first attempt at putting windows in was a total disaster between hay trucks showing up and tools breaking. It kind of turned into a whole thing. So he came back after I was home with the kids and he put that window in. And I am super grateful. But that was way too easy. So I think we should do 1 more window. 1 more window and then we can take a tea and coffee break.
Hello, Liza. How do you do?
That window's gonna get so much
I'm
wetter.
writing you a letter. I hope it reaches you. I know it's been a long time since you heard from me. I'm still kicking around.
We gave this windowsill a really steep pitch. And we did that for a reason because basically all of our weather tends to come from the west and it will literally drive rain horizontally into this wall. And so we needed a windowsill that was just going to let that water shed off and not migrate into the house. So that's the theory why we made it so steep. Not all the windows will have it quite as steep as this, but trust me, in Montana, we get crazy storms. This is a good idea. Okay, so we have all this wool and I've been drying it in the sun. You can see it hasn't been cleaned. It's just the leftovers of shearing a sheep. But this should be the perfect material for what we're about to do. We had a great comment on the channel that we should take borax, make a solution, and then dip wool into it. And then you dry that out, and that's apparently what pioneers used to chink in their gaps. So we're gonna give that a shot. Yeah, hon? From what our commenter kind of told us and what I could find on the internet, which wasn't very much, but what I could find said that borax is not only a bug repellent, but it actually kills bugs. And any moisture that might get into these gaps, the borax dries it. So by dipping the wool in that borax solution, basically we're making an inhospitable pocket for bugs in life and something that will draw away any moisture that might get in when the rain drives through this window. So it's definitely worth a try, and it beats spray foam, right? Something about spray foam just would not feel right on this project. Well, I think that looks really nice, hon.
It's nice to be out of the wind.
All right, that's the second Pioneer window in. Now it's time to make a Pioneer remedy straight from the land. Robbie and Jesse took the kids on a hike earlier and collected the raw ingredients to make rose hip tea with pine needles and a touch of prairie herbs.
Ah, it smells amazing. Sage. Ranch sage. There's Uncle Dan's right down there.
Well, this is that old railroad grade. Just climbing it from the side. Woo! Okay, Maggie, what do you think?
I think it looks amazing.
You like it?
Yeah, I love it.
Look how tall it is.
Yeah, it's super tall.
Oh, look, there's a bear.
We won't linger long, but this second layer of siding, done the same way a pioneer did, even with the square nails, well, it took an act of will for us to tackle. Sometimes you're just done doing certain jobs. And we all felt done with siding. Luckily, our friend Brad was up for a bit more suffering, and Robbie was willing to take a break from farming. So we got it done. 2 layers of pine boards with a sandwich of tar paper in between. Would shiplap have been better? Yeah. Would vertical siding be even better than that? Oh yeah. But the pioneer who built this probably did so with limited tools, limited help, and limited time. Winter was coming for him just as much as it is for us. This project is about honoring the architecture that existed, not how we think it should have been. And this right here, this is how it was on the prairie in 1889.
And it's for that reason too that we're leaving these boards totally plain. We just want to soak up how this place looked when it was first built in 1889. It would have looked as fresh and bright and new as it does right now. That's how the pioneers who built it experienced this place. So we just want to kind of soak that up. So no graying solution, nothing like that. Let's just experience it how it was, brand new.
While this bit of siding has been made fresh and clean like it was all those years ago, the other side of the house, well, it's wholly original, patinaed over 135 years to perfection. And of course, nothing is square, level, or plumb.
Oh, God damn.
Did God do that again?
Why, what? They're not the same? No. I'm so sorry. Can we cut it and splice one in? Oh, we cut the angle on the wrong end. It's hard. There's a lot of complex angles to this. Oh, man.
The good news is Robbie solved the problem with just a few cuts. The window was getting its official test fit and looking very right. But as we celebrated, a chilling realization dawned. We'd been wrong to think we were alone.
Yeah. What, did he go into the bushes? Well, we spotted an injured black bear up on the hill right next to the house here. So the kids are inside, so it's not a big threat to us. It's something we gotta keep an eye on.
Shouldn't we pray for him? Dear God, keep this bear safe.
Blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. God bless you, bear. He shouldn't be coming back this way. That's not like them. Well, we are literally having a standoff with a bear right now. How big do you think he is, Dad? That big?
Yeah, and I'm concerned that he's come back on us over that hill, so his wound is not that bad, but he may be hungry because he is wounded and not able to.
Yeah, I don't like that he's watching us.
Yeah.
How far away is he?
Circling. Right now, 150 yards.
You're right, he has circled us. Window progress has stopped for a moment while we keep an eye on him. He's circled back around the house, staring down at us, which is not behavior you want to see in a bear. So I can't say I've ever worried much about a black bear, but at that size, he's still there. And that bold, yeah, we're keeping the kids away. All right, he decided to retreat. Whatever that bear's intention is, the cabin's his. We're taking the kids home and we're getting out of here. It's his place first anyway. We're just visiting.
Look, I'm serious, he's coming.
All right, we're going. Yeah, he's coming, let's go. Let's go. Next.
See the bear, Mama?
You see him?
Huh?
All right, let's leave him be.
Is this scary or fun?
Both.
Scary and fun?
Yep.
Nature is a harsh mother. We made sure Fish and Wildlife could find the bear, and we left him in peace.
Well, it's a new day, and we woke up from 90 degrees yesterday to upper 30s with wind. Yeah, we feel the pressure to get these windows in, get this house buttoned up. We're down to our last window, but There's still a lot of little stuff to do, like adding all the trim around each one, adding the wool, chinking in any of the gaps. I cannot believe how much darker this west side of the house is. That aging solution totally worked. So much so that from a distance, you cannot tell the 135-year-old north wall from the west wall. As you get close, yeah, you can see that there's not as much character, but the color's right. So we're racing to beat the Montana winter. It's coming.
So, truth be told, we don't know what the original windows look like. These window openings are massive, but we found no window weights or spaces for weights. So the windows may have been a primitive sort of double hung that were just wedged open or shut. Whatever they were, we took materials we had around the ranch and cobbled together solid windows that are the exact dimensions of the openings that were there originally. We have to run to the shop and get out of this wind. Let's get some fir boards cut and put onto the old door, if only to cover the gaps and strengthen it. We thought about taking the whole door apart and rebuilding it with fresh wood, but when we went to plane the boards for it, Robbie was in for a surprise.
Some boards, and boy, it wasn't working very well, and I thought it was just the fir that we were running through, and turns out these blades are extremely dull. And I'm gonna save the person's identity, but somebody was running old boards from their deck through this, and I think there was some dirt in it. The middle, they're just toast. Should not look like that. So we made the decision, I made the decision, we bought a helical head, unplugged the machine before we took it apart. Anyway, frustrating. This will be down for a week. The other planer over here, it's in pieces too. So anyways, this is the part that you guys don't always see. It's the part that's frustrating. It's part of life, and we try to not bore you guys with this detail, but sometimes this is what real life is.
The front door got done, albeit with rough faces. We have salvaged hinges and a brass and iron rim lock all ready to go. The railroad may have come and gone. The world may be completely different today, but this little house has seen it all and is still here.
But there's actually this is what, an 1/8 of an inch crowd? That's just from being sandblasted for 135 years.
The front door is going back on the house today. The 135-year-old face is exactly as it was. The fresh new interior siding is strong. Now comes the fun part of making it fit into the rough door frame. And if that sounds easy, well, get ready for a pack of surprises. But it's all going to be worth it, because we're going to spend our first night in the cabin tonight, cooking over the open fire, sleeping in bunk beds, and generally getting to know the personality of this house. This is a huge step.
Okay, so this is the front door.
You can see we have the original front door here. We reinforced it with fresh fir, because that's going to be the strongest wood we've got. And it's nailed through, so the nails come all the way through the front, and then they're bent over the sides. So it's built just like the original door was. It's just a little bit thicker because we added that fresh wood.
But that was the best way for us to be able to reuse the original door, but have the strength of new wood. Because at the end of the day, a front door has to work. It has to be a front door, and it can't sag and it can't move. So this was our best solution for that. I think it's in line with the original. It honors how it was made the first time, but it's a whole lot stronger.
Of course, the magic of this door is the 1889 boards and weathering preserved on the main face. And that will be revealed to all of us as soon as we get this thing hanging in the door frame. But one problem hits us hard: the mechanics of an old-fashioned door.
Okay, so we're trying to figure out how the weight presses down on a door.
This brace is holding up the far end, and we put the brace on the wrong direction. It should have been going that way for the way that we wanted it to swing.
So if the hinges are on this side, the brace should be going the other way?
Yes.
Oh. But yeah, I was confused. I figured if the hinges were on this side, that angle is what wants to sag, so you put a brace in it and...
Oh, you're thinking that's keeping that from falling down.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the point is to hold the bottom up. You look at every gate on the place.
Yeah.
The Z goes...
Okay, hey, I trust you. I'm the idiot. All right, hinges on.
One of the hinges was bent beyond repair, and the other one was lost. So it's back to the shop for the salvaged ones we dug up last week. That's the beauty of never throwing anything away on the ranch.
All right, bye kittens.
With some new old hinges on the way, the door isn't getting any easier. Now that the hinges are here, the problem solving continues.
Because ideally the door would open.
If the hinge was on the inside, it could go about that far.
I don't know. It's more complicated than I thought.
The door we thought would swing one way is going to swing the other, but actually that's a gift, and this is totally going to work out. The precision of the door here is all due to the fact that we have some stunning historic hardware that is going to go on, and it's very particular. Definitely not standard building practice, and with that, the hits of the day just keep on coming.
Not gonna work. We switched the door hang. I got it for that side, not this side. It doesn't rotate like that. I wonder if I can take it apart.
Yeah, take it apart.
This is your fault, Robbie. You changed the door.
So why? That's reversible though, isn't it?
No, the
Why?
key would be upside down.
I don't think it's weird to have that upside down.
It's pretty weird, but I guess we're the only ones who are going to see it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I wouldn't know what upside down was. The ignition's on the wrong side of the Defender, and that doesn't bother us.
That's because it's British.
I know, it's a British door.
I'm not ordering another one. I refuse.
I think that's called a Montana special. Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll go with it.
Here you go.
All right, here's our stuff.
Mom, more loud.
I'm sorry, it's loud. Look at that, Georgie. Okay, ready?
Another problem solved with a beautiful result. It's been a long time since this old house has seen a working door, and one that wasn't dangling on a single hinge and opening into a mouse and wild animal haven. Just this past winter, the whole house was on the end of its rope, but this year changed all of that. Today, it not only gets its front door back, but it's about to get a fresh interior wall from homegrown trees. And once Jesse sees the beauty of that, well, it's off to the races with the interior. This house won't be a wooden empty shell for long.
But first things first, we've got to get freshly planed boards onto this whole west wall. Because that's going to be the spot where we can hang pots and pans, we can hang our tools, and we can actually make it a working space.
A clean workspace makes for happy workers. The west wall is up first. Freshly planed pine boards, just like the house originally had, are going on. This wood isn't from the store or even a local lumberyard. It's from trees right outside these windows, complete with imperfections and lots of charm. We're screwing in one layer of boards in order to be able to pull them off in the future. If anyone remembers our initial wall discoveries, it was a lot of dead mice. Then you will appreciate our trauma over this. After the screws, it will be lots of pre-drilling and then warming up our muscles for hand nailing. A lot of American-made square nails are getting hammered in. Did we say by hand? Because yeah, that deserves some sort of award. These nails are not delicate, smooth things.
Even pre-drilling it, it cracked it a little bit. So I gotta be more careful. I'm going to jump up to a bigger drill bit. One of these times I'm gonna get it where I don't screw up the wood. There. One without dinging the wood.
We'll jumpstart this process and get you to the end, because the results, well, they're worth it. And and we decided that after seeing them, one wall wasn't enough. So we did two. The south wall was just begging for the same golden boards and smooth finish. All that was left to do was trim the windows out, and the walls would be done. Of course, seeing a wall go up in seconds is a treat. Cutting trees and planing the boards is a much longer and much more arduous process. That work fell on Robbie's shoulders, but of course it gave a great excuse to buy a new-to-us planer and make mountains of shavings for the kids to enjoy. There were days of planing and cutting, with dinners spent out at the shop, but that's part of the fun, and family time is family time.
Oh, hey, hon. That's a pile.
It is. Frustrating, but because they're bowed, I'm cutting both edges, but yeah, parallel along this one.
Oh, I see it.
Perfect.
Perfectly straight,
here.
Perfectly straight, and then it just...
2 inches at the end.
The house has a door and the start of an interior.
What do you think? It has molasses, a little bit of cinnamon, and cornmeal. That's not bad. It's sort of like cornbread pancake. Yeah, come here, ready?
I need a blueberry.
Oh, this is a syrupy bite. Here it comes. Yum.
Yummy.
I think this is awesome.
I think it's good too.
I think it's good too. We're too cold enough for me.
As the plates were cleared, the kids tucked into bed. Then the cookware was cleaned by the fire, and the parents stayed up to talk. And everyone fell asleep that night to the northern lights dancing above the house in the Judith Mountains. And then it was time for the crown jewel. A few months ago, we weren't sure we'd ever find an old cookstove for this pioneer house, especially an early 1900s one like this. These are getting pretty rare.
Yeah.
Hold the...
Come in. Ow, my phone's stuck. Grace and beauty.
We were on the hunt. We put the word out to friends and family and hoped for the best. But for a while there was nothing.
Let's just walk it out. We'll drag it out on this. If we can pivot it at all, it's probably easier to do that than trying to pivot on those, I don't know. This might, Brad, be like the first time you learn to roller skate, and as soon as it goes on there, it might try to... Sure.
So, this is freaking me out.
I bet every town has that one person who knows everyone and knows all the history. Well, in our town, that's Shirley, and she came through big time on this one. She found this old stove just a week after us mentioning our search to her, hidden in a storage unit in town. If you guys haven't watched that episode where we find it and clean it up, go back in the journey and check that out. We can't be sure this 1800s pioneer house had a stove quite like this one, but it surely had something close. There was never any electricity out here. The power lines came through much, much later, and even then they never stopped here. So, odds are this house had a wood burner.
Here, lift up your hand. Okay, sit down. Okay, move your foot and lift it up again. Okay, good.
Boy, are we lucky we have Brad here while we stand around and watch Robbie calculate the next move. Odds are everything happened on a cook stove back in the day. Food, laundry, heat, this was the heart of the house. And now, after a major amount of muscle has gone into scrubbing, degreasing, and scouring rust, it's as good as ever. These cast iron beauties might be old, but they were built to last, and this one has.
It went a lot easier than I thought it would.
Don't jinx it.
We can
Not done yet.
We can do it.
This is great, Brad.
So here we are, the moment of big reveal. A stove built before the Titanic ever set sail is fixed and ready to work again.
What do you guys think?
Can we test this out?
We need to test it out. Yeah. Where does the fire go? You're right.
And do you need any more of the blackening stuff?
Yeah, stove blackener
Stove
and
black.
nickel polish.
Stove top.
If we light the stove now, we'd burn the whole house down. We need to get the stovepipe punched through the roof. So Robbie is climbing up there to mark the metal in order to cut through the wood and tin. It's a straight shot through the peak. Easy enough to plan, a little harder to execute.
Happy, see that?
That looks good, Will.
Well, I have a problem. I might.
I think that'll fit.
I might.
We went with double walls on the stovepipe. Not authentic at all, but the peace of mind is a sacrifice we're willing to make. A house or two in history has burnt down from a hot stovepipe combusting the wood around it. We'd like that to not be us.
I'm gonna see if there's any...
Touching what, the wood?
The wood, yeah.
Well, you don't want the rain and the hail coming in.
Well, I don't think that's gonna... There's other holes that can come in on.
While that work is going on, you may have noticed the interior of this house is coming along in leaps and bounds. The walls are the first thing in need of attention.
So I love the purity of the freshly planed wood, but the problem with pine is, given sunlight, this is not going to stay this color. This is going to turn yellow. And with every bit of UV light that it gets, it's going to get more and more yellow. That's just not a look that I really want to see. But likewise, we don't want to do something trendy that, you know, people will say, oh wow, that was the 2020s when they renovated this. We really want it to have a classic feel. So we'll see. We've got some like sour milk and lime paints that we could play around with, which are historic paints. Or we could mess around some more with oxidation materials and see if we can't just take that fresh wood and maybe tone it down a little bit.
These boxes are gifts from friends and old basement finds we had tucked away and forgotten about. And that historic lime and sour milk paint we had talked about didn't make it to the walls, but it did make it onto the furniture. Jesse and Robbie built this tall, dry sink table the other day. It's pine, made from scraps from the trees we cut for wall boards, painted with a traditional milk paint, ordered in powdered form, and then mixed with water. The kids got their hands dirty mixing the practice colors. The final color is a deep Lexington green, popular in the late 1800s with an oil and wax finish over it. Simple carpentry and nothing flashy, but it does the job. Alright, that's enough process. Let's cut to the chase. The interior is ready for guests and for its first fire. We have guests coming in a couple hours, and tonight is a big night. It's not just the first time this little homestead has had a proper heat source in it since, the late 1800s. Tonight is more than that.
Okay, so tonight is Clayton's birthday party. Clayton is the photographer, the editor. It's been the three of us from the beginning on this project. Robbie and Clayton have been friends forever, and tonight is his 33rd. So we're gonna have a bunch of people out here. The house is kinda ready, but this will be the very first time firing up the cook stove in the house. So yeah, I'm nervous. We've got some fire extinguishers on hand, and we're gonna hope for the best. We've been in prep mode, getting the place set. Before too long, we're gonna have a lot of people in this house. We're gonna test how strong this floor is. Robbie's nervous about that too. We're gonna have some good food, good friends, and a nice little get together. Happy birthday, Clayton.
Hey,
how's it going?
Pretty good. Happy birthday to you, dear Clayton.
We even even had Zane, the archaeologist from the start of this project, back to see the final result.
Like a old school double hung. Because we didn't find any window weights or anything, so they would just slid up.
So this is the same window as...
And this, when we opened that wall up, we didn't know where a window was, because it had all been boarded. That had been a window, it had been a door.
Right,
and
I
it had
think
been
that's
all
what
that
we
stuff.
looked at. It was confusing, some of those things.
I doubt a professional archaeologist can put their stamp of approval on this project, given all the liberties we took bringing the cabin back to life. But Zane's smiles say a lot. We think this project does show how to respect and honor history, all while being a normal working farm and ranch family. We did all we could on the cheap ourselves, with a love of the people who came before us. And for a humble house, well, this is 1,000 times better than being forgotten. With a stovepipe now in and working, it'll be time for the very last bit of exterior architecture, the massive stone steps to the front door.
It's been almost a full year since we started this renovation. We started with stone, and we're ending with stone.
This house was a derelict 1800s homestead on the Montana prairie this past winter. We're headed into winter again, but the house looks a whole lot different, yet kind of the same. The last finishing touch will be massive stone steps leading to the front door.
Obviously, working with field stones, you're not gonna get the flattest stones, you're not gonna get the most perfect ones, but I have a couple of tools I can dress stone a little bit. Mostly, this is a rubble stone bit of work. I'm just trying to get through some of the roots in the topsoil, the stuff that has a lot of moisture and life in it, because all that decay will cause settling. Bye, boys! All right, it's just us. Let's do some stonework. Robbie and George went to get the shovels. Well, after I'm done with the pickaxe, it'll be time for leveling. Lift. Go.
Go still.
She likes you, Georgie. Dry stacking stone is a legitimate traditional method for laying stonework. It does allow for some movement to happen. You know, you're not gonna put a sheet of glass over a dry stacked foundation and expect it to never move. But the point is, like so many traditional methods of building, it can compensate for the movement over time. The movement's expected, and when it happens, this is a type of craft that can handle that flexibility. Whereas in our modern world, you pour something with cement, well, if it moves, it's destroyed. That's it. It's done. Its lifespan is not gonna exceed 100 years. Whereas this kind of method, this can exceed hundreds of years. And it's a really interesting way to fit these steps in with the 1800s architecture of the house. It's one of my favorite things to get to do. And anytime I get to work with stone, I am in heaven. We're gonna work with our hands outside on a beautiful fall day in Montana, surrounded by Black Angus cows. Because whenever a person comes out here with anything interesting, like a pile of stone, the cows are gonna join us. So let's enjoy them. Hey ladies.
Now, all these rocks didn't magically appear. They had to be dug from the ground, one piece at a time.
So on the subject of rocks, you can see it's pretty good dirt. Not much going on, not much going on. And bam, there's a rock. It's huge. You can see my hand against it. And in that toolbar, it just tipped it up. Came underneath it, ripped it up. Thankfully, we bought a heavy duty one. That was a nice thing about that. Jesse will be happy. I'm not. I get to pick them up now. She'll have plenty of projects to build with them. But see this shank? That big heavy shank, the rock comes underneath it and pop! And it comes up and There's all these little U-bolts that can break off. Maybe broke a U-bolt or two, but there was one there, and I thought I saw one more. I've already pulled about, oh, here's one right here. So we'll come back with the skid steer. You can tell this drive is right underneath the ground. So good as this ground looks, as not rocky, it does have rocks. There's one rock there, we'll put that by that. There's another one. So this is what we're trying to break off. You can see still growing there, you can't pull it out. Shovels on there, the sweeps will come through and they'll cut it just parallel, and then this strip will come off. 2 acres here, 3 acres that we're gonna do, and I will put you guys on a time lapse up here on the hill and we'll see what it looks like. There's this whole hillside with timber on it, and there's this little grass strip that comes down through that. Well, that's what we call a grass waterway. So when all the snow and rain and everything melts on that hill, this is the lowest spot. And so all that moisture will run down through there. And as you can see, it'll go underneath the tractor and around this hill. And it won't have very severe, if any, erosion at all. If we just plowed that up, it looked like this dirt, it would be a foot or two deep, a big trench. So when this gets seeded back to hay, we'll probably just cut it for hay, and it'll just be one big field. But for now, we'll just let it be, and it will hold the soil here in place.
Back at the homestead, those rocks are being layered one on top of the other to make a mass of stone steps leading up to the door.
We've had some great comments from people who've watched the channel and they've said, you know, either I grew up the same way, I grew up on land, I grew up with all these little outbuildings and cabins scattered around the ranch, or they can remember their grandmothers cooking on these old cook stoves. There's definitely a common thread, especially in the American experience and places like Australia, I mean, really all over the world. I think there's a lot of people who can remember that shift from a more agrarian life into our world today, which is industrial and cities. Pretty rare to have land these days. I know for me, the ranch I grew up on is gone through changing tides that were out of any family's control. It's just not something we could hold on to. So I know for me and for Robbie, it's definitely become a deeper passion, trying to appreciate the family ranch. We're able to hold on to what's here so much more strongly. That's where this renovation comes from. That's where the desire to preserve history, to try to keep alive those memories, it's so much stronger in us because of that loss. And I think a lot of people can relate. There's a lot of you guys who grew up on ranches that are now gone. You know, from that, you guys and us, we've been able to build different dreams for the future. There's a gratitude in that, but there's also this sort of vein of tragedy at losing a way of life that I think more and more of us realize was really special and probably isn't coming back. Unless the world goes to hell in a handbasket, which it might. You know, this love of history and the preservation of a lot of really humble ranch life, it connects to a lot more people. I think we all have deep ranch roots back in our families. But for now, there's more work to do. This stone isn't gonna lay itself.
Projects should have a start and an end. We're notorious for getting 99% done and then getting distracted, but that's not the case here. The big, heavy work ends right now as the snow gets ready to fly. And throughout the winter, there will be plenty of time for experiencing this place, living the pioneer jobs, foods, and skills as the snow piles up and the ground freezes. You may be thinking to yourself, these steps are not exactly perfectly square. Not precise. Isn't that dangerous? Look, we hear you, and we wouldn't champion them for everyday use for all people. But this world needs a little room for magic, for fun, and for history. Life is serious enough as it is. A return to different times is just what the doctor ordered, and historically a cabin this humble would have had humble steps up to it. We can live with any lack of perfection. This project has always been about what the pioneers could have built with what they had on hand. Stone from the Fields is one of those things. These steps are the cherry on top of a year-long project that has brought us so much enjoyment. As our good friend Harry said this week, you guys have built a time machine. And it's true. We plan to experience this house and to go back in time in history, to learn candle making, woodworking, pioneer cooking, and the like. But the renovations won't stop here. We have a great piece of history we're looking at dragging out of the ground as we speak. It hasn't moved since Grandpa was a boy. After all, this old family ranch is not short on things needing attention, repair, and love. And this one has a really cool backstory. But we'll get to that another time. There's a time to build and a time to experience what has been built. We're heading into the experience part of this old house. It seems fitting to end it as we started it 1 year ago, on a cold, snowy day out on the Montana prairie.
Thanks everyone for coming on this journey with us. We've loved sharing the story of this house with you.
We'll have more ranch experiences to come, so we hope you stick with us.
Thanks. We'll see you next time.
Cool.
Cool.
I had to look away because I am blind.
No, I think.
By the light. Look out.
Uncle Dan's, homesteaded 1889, Montana Territory, by Dan McLaughlin and family, kept intact by generations of the Jackson family. Year built, unknown. Maybe a family house, maybe used by the Great Northern Railroad. All who knew its use have passed away. Tell your children family stories, and tell them again when they forget. Renovated 2024.